don't overpromise. Don't don't over, especially if you're out to dinner with your couple's friends and you over overstate how wonderful you are and your family is. If your wife's sitting there going, "What a sorry son of a gun," I think it just really starts with integrity. And it's just, what is your wake? Study your wake with your wife and your kids. Be honest with yourself. None of us are perfect. I wish I worked out more the last month. I'm the only one to blame for my bigger waist than it should be. And I want to, it's like, get real with yourself. Then you can go to your wife and I just learned from Lloyd, even with my girl daughters who are now in their 20s. I've joined their journey. I'm not judging it.
And Pete, what if we look more like granular inside your heart, mine, and Micah? We're all kind of working on the same thing, growing
Yeah.
close to God, growing, making sure these amazing women that choose to stay living with us feel more cherished every day. Understanding these unique kids we have and nurturing them to be really amazing men and women of God. And now you and I both have grandbabies, and we're learning, what does that mean? I mean, what do you do with a 6-month-old or a 1-year-old? Or do you just ignore them and then wait till they're 16 and take them hunting, right?
Mm.
So talk about how have you learned to help Rainey feel cherished and really invest in those 3 girls, so they know, like your sister told me when I saw her last, Pete is the best man I know in the world. Like, think about that. Your sister said,
Mm.
Pete Chambers is the best man I know in this planet. Do you remember her saying that? I don't know if you heard her say that.
You told me she said it, but I knew y'all were talking. I didn't want to interrupt it. Hopefully
So
it was good stuff she was saying.
you've been surrounded by girls. You even have a
Yeah.
girl dog. So, like, tell us about how you
Yeah.
help them feel cherished.
Yeah. One of the things I talk about with the young guys too is about walking your walk. A lot of us walk into church and everybody's like, "Oh, there's Micah. He's doing great things." And look at those beautiful kids. And I'll bring now to my story. When I was growing up, everybody was ooh and ah, and I was just like, God, but if you only knew what really was going on. And no family's perfect, and there's challenges and things that we have to work through all the time. But I think the first thing I like to say, Lloyd, is just don't overpromise. Don't don't over, especially if you're out to dinner with your couple's friends and you over overstate how wonderful you are and your family is. If your wife's sitting there going, "What a sorry son of a gun," I think it just really starts with integrity. And it's just, what is your wake? Study your wake with your wife and your kids. Be honest with yourself. None of us are perfect. I wish I worked out more the last month. I'm the only one to blame for my bigger waist than it should be. And I want to, it's like, get real with yourself. Then you can go to your wife and I just learned from Lloyd, even with my girl daughters who are now in their 20s. I've joined their journey. I'm not judging it. And I think that works with my parents. It works with my wife. It works with my sisters. It works with my friends. And how can we come alongside of them and love them? And I think it starts by a conversation. And, with Rainey, I thought I knew what Rainey's long-term perfect life metrics were, and I was just wrong. And there were so many things on there that I was like, oh, dude, I couldn't have written that even more better for myself. It's like, she was like, I want to be with you at so and so. I was like, oh, dude, I didn't know she wanted to be with me. And so it's the conversation. It's don't overpromise and underdeliver. And it's truly to be a servant leader. Um, how are you putting your family above yourself? And none of us are perfect, and every day that's a choice. But look for opportunities to do that. Our wives are easier to please than we think. I've lived with women. I'm overwhelmed. I'm losing the battle. I don't know how I exist, how I'm a male in my family because there's so many women. But uh, they are easier to please than we think. And sometimes it's clearing up that simple misunderstanding that we had a week ago, um, that you didn't think was a big deal, but it's a big deal for her. And you clear that up, and you just say, I'm going to hurt you again at that. I'm terrible at that, but no, I want to get better at it. And I hear you. I just think it's that. And I'll end with that.
And Pete, one of you and I teach that there are three things that if you want to squander the rest of your life, suppose you set out that you said, I'm going to squander the rest of my life so that 100 years from now in heaven, I look back with deep, deep rooted sadness and regret that I wasted my time, energy, money, and influence when I could have produced something that lasted 100 or 1,000 years. And one of the three things is complexity, and then
Yeah.
comfort and complacency. And, in your situation, you could have all three, right? And I remember
Mhm.
we were out at your ranch that is going to be your ranch. And we're in the, what do they call it? The gator, or what do you drive around in? Um,
The mule.
the mule. And, and I said to you, so Pete, how are you going to decide to keep the ranch or not keep the ranch? And I asked your dad, like, what do you think about that? And it was an amazing conversation, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And yet you're faced with this complexity. I mean, it takes, what is it, 8 miles from one side of the ranch to the other? I mean, it's a big piece of property. There's a lot of moving parts, but your dad gave you so much freedom. Do you
Yeah.
remember what he said? And then the second question is like, how are you going to decide? Because it's got benefits and it's got complexity.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that on the business side, you if you're rewarded with success, it's okay to buy some toys. We've through 100X and through my YPO experience, I've seen guys buy too many toys and the toys own them and they don't own the toys. And I think, Lloyd, it's why for me the roadmap has been. So for you watching that don't know, at 100X and through 1 year of work, you're going to end up with a one-page life plan. And my favorite thing to say is, let's start. And I'm seeing it in the Wall Street Journal, and I didn't come up with a statement, but it's obviously been around a while. But let's start at the end and work backwards. Let's start at the coffin and work backwards. There are some things that need to become um, must do's or must not do's if you want to end well whoever you're trying to please, whether for me that would be God, and second Rainey and my children, and that helps you prioritize your life. And when you have a roadmap that you look at a decision of, which again, let's take a wonderful thing like a family ranch. Oh, there are so many families, especially in places like Texas, that rules the life. That is the family history, and you could never not have that. And maybe our ranch isn't old enough, but I'm trying to hold that out there and say, does it fit with finishing well the way I've defined finishing well, that I believe God's speaking to my heart and what that picture looks like when I'm laying in the coffin. And I think that roadmap always helps me stay out of trouble with the pleasure part. Um, it is nothing wrong with pleasure, but is it robbing you from what is significant and meaningful to you finishing well? And I've just had a roadmap for 20 plus years because of my friendship with Lloyd Reeb and Bob Buford. And I'm so thankful for it. I have all of them. And I look back at it. And while they weren't perfect, it's amazing how right they've been, and the guiding and the the benefit I've gotten out of using that as a guardrail in my life. That's all. What we need are guardrails, um, things that we're working towards in the future, but there's got to be some guardrails and complexity. You add too many fun things, you've got complexity. You've got too many businesses. Lloyd and I've served guys that are like, oh, I'm very wealthy, and everybody oohs and ahs over me, but I'm miserable. I've got all these K1s and all these businesses and all these things. And, in the club they walk in, and that's like, oh, there's old Jim. He's got, 92 K1s. What a stud. At home, he's freaking miserable because he can't even go enjoy his fishing boat because one of the K1s is wrong and he's having to go fix it. It's just, we see it all the time. So the complexity, the pleasures can turn into complexities. And
And
that's
Pete,
what you've got to be careful.
wasn't your
Yes.
dad courageous to look across at you when we're out and, just riding that four-wheeler around and say, Pete, I did work hard to accumulate this ranch. Impossible to accumulate this land so close to Dallas ever again. But don't feel constrained by that. Like, you got to
Yeah.
decide. It's your ranch. You're going to have to decide what God wants you to do with this. So freeing, right? And can you imagine what that would feel like inside for him to have the courage to just loosen his hands like
Yeah.
that, as opposed to
And I
saying,
think
Pete,
there's
I
many,
built this for you and yada, yada, yada. And you know how lucky you are to have. I mean, he could have
yeah,
said something really different.
that's the beauty of generational faith, that he knows God is first and he doesn't want to strap me with things. And Lloyd, you often probably hear me say to our 100X guys, I come to you as a son, and I'm working with the guys that we're going taking 100X through, and I'm asking them, what are you handing? You think you're handing your kids a blessing, and you're handing them a basket of complexity. So you've got the next 30 years to simplify this thing, or know that you're handing them what you see at the club as God, they're well-to-do kids. I gave them too much money, dang little bastards. Or, or think about what you're handing them, and hand them things that will enhance their life and get rid of the rest. And I think Dad is a wise man, and is not handing. We've worked through the complexities together, and his death is not going to be a burden. It'll be sad, but it will not be a burden to the future generations. We've worked it where there's blessings, and enhancers rather than things that look like success that end up being a bag of heavy rocks.
Pete, can you talk about some things you've coached a lot of guys through 100X? Can you talk about some of the things that you've seen that guys have done that have had the biggest impact, like on their lives? Like when you meet them and they're 50 or 60 and they have overcomplicated their life, like what advice have you given them, and what have you seen them do to kind of untangle the mess that they've created?
Yeah, I always default to the guys that I really admire. We've had some guys that have all put their muscle into a non-profit or a business that is doing good for a certain segment of the community, whether it be the deaf or the blind. We have a guy that has grown a great facility in Houston that serves the deaf and has an amazing hearing center. And we have a gentleman that we've served that has a business that has call centers with blind people. And he's taken all the entrepreneurial go-go that he knows in his DNA, and it's this massive blessing that also makes money, that he then takes money and gives to other wonderful causes. When you see that circle working, I just get fired up. I mean, it's just like, that dude is ringing the bell. And that's maybe 1 out of 10 of the guys that we meet. It's not, hopefully there'll be 4 or 5, in a few years after they come through the 100X, but oftentimes there's 1 or 2 out of the 10 that have accomplished that. And they are, so that's the beautiful peer-to-peer rub, is that those guys are sharing their story and they're just like, that's just what I do. But the other guys in the forum are like, well, I've got 500 million bucks and I'm not doing anything. I want to be like you. And so those two guys stick out in my mind. And there's a lot of stories of guys that, still can't figure it out. They can't fit their life on one page in a roadmap. They've got too many, this and that's, and it's harder work for them to accomplish simplifying their life to where they can really excel to the finish line and really be remembered for the thing that defines their legacy and in their mind. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's
No, it did. This will probably be my final question, and Lloyd might have one more, but I think a lot of guys struggle with like, oh man, they want to serve, they want to do things, they're busy. Can you talk about how you've used your marketplace skills, like specifically with like places like River Tree? Because I think it's like easy to be like, oh, I'll go be a reading tour, but that's not multiplying your time and all this business
yeah,
experience you had. Because I struggle with that too. It was like, man, I feel like I'm called to give my time, but now Lloyd's coached me to be like, hey, they really need your expertise. Like make your hours you
yeah,
volunteer with super
yeah.
impactful.
I think obviously we got the low cost pro advice for people to just stick your little toe in there and go serve one lunch for somebody and see what you feel like. My story at River Tree is ended up just being kind of textbook to what, not textbook, but it's just been awesome. So what I wanted to do is to make enough that my wife could not work. I wanted my wife to be at home. And I think that was a first level of service to our family for me and for Rainey. Then Rainey got our kids to a point where they were at school, and she learned through our exposure to halftime that maybe she ought to be doing something. Even though the kids aren't gone, she could be doing something to give back and to apply her talents. And she started going to River Tree. The school started, and she was part of the founding group. And she was the volunteer coordinator. And she was calling all of our friends and saying, hey, would you like to give an hour and come love on this kid and tutor him and read to him and whatever? She did that for a number of years. So I'm at work while I called halftime my ministry thing. That was my give. And we were doing some financial giving. I really wasn't giving my time yet, but I provided an opportunity for Rainey to give her time. She goes and does an amazing thing. And then our company was making enough money. And I said, okay, and this maybe Micah helps the younger guys that are still fighting the fight every day. I said, but you know what? One of the benefits I'm going to provide is if my employees want to go give a day of their time at a nonprofit, and especially River Tree, I will pay their salary. So that was the way I started bleeding into engaging the company into it. And then we started to say, okay, well, how about this? How about let's sponsor a kid? Let's pay for a scholarship together for one of the kids at River Tree. And all of a sudden that kid became the Inspire Us movie star. And we'd have that kid over and we'd send them pictures, and we all got to rally around the fact that we were sending a kid to River Tree. Started there. And then so we had people volunteering, we had people, and so then I sell the company, and that's a whole nother story. Can a servant leader sell his company? I mean, after creating all this love going around, yes, the company sold. My wife came to me and said, join the board. I said, nope, doesn't fit on my roadmap. I serve high capacity leaders in thriving organizations. And I met the founder, and I felt like I could serve him. I joined the board. Within 2 years, he said, I need somebody to run this thing because I don't know. Your skill sets are better than mine. And that's how God took me through the process over the last 10 to 12 years. I think it starts small. And it may start through your wife or your child, but find a little something that makes sense for your company. Now we all know a company of purpose is a great place to work. It's so much more fashionable today than it was even back in my day. But I think it just starts somewhere, and find something that you're passionate about, then be a cheerleader of it. Pay for people to go do something that they might not do on their own. And who knows where it can lead. The next thing you know, I mean, Rainey and I were the lead gift on this school, and I've given 8 years of chairman life, and it's been a wonderful thing. And I have no idea, this school is a private school. We don't have school choice here in Texas. We have to raise $2.5 million every year. It could fail next year. I mean, there's no promise for success, but roll up your sleeves, go do it, and leave it all in the field, and to God be the glory.
So one last thing, Pete, is, one of the greatest joys you and I've discovered in the second half is really the relationships of the people you choose to love extravagantly and go do stuff together with. And so you can sort of look at your second half as who first and then the what, right? And you and I kind of look at each other and say, okay, what do we want to go do? And 100X Forum is one of those. And thankfully, the thing is, we're going to be able to give pretty significantly through that effort. But if we weren't doing that, we'd have to figure out what to go do with our time getting together. I mean, we'd probably be biking somewhere or golfing or who knows what, right? So talk
Yeah.
about this 2-for-1 or 3-for-1 we get, where we get to show up, beautiful places, serve people, and hang out together, and then see God do stuff like one of the guys we're serving just built a $60 million school for the town of Uvalde in Texas, where 20 some children died tragically. Like, think about the joy of that. I mean, we get behind guys like that are changing the world. So it's like a 3-for-1 in the second half if you choose to think about who do you want to do life with.
Yeah, I just, take that gentleman as an example, Chris Huckabee. When you see a golfer in the zone, and he's just hitting every shot, and it's just beautiful, and he's making making it happen. I feel that way with 100Xers. When you see a guy that is in his calling, he knows his strengths, he knows his weaknesses, he knows what God's calling him to do, and he's choosing to make an effort to do it. The joy you see in him and his family, and the joy we get to have in watching it, is it's contagious. And I remember when I first met Bob Buford, and the first time I met Lloyd at a YPO event in probably 2000, it was 99 or 2000. Lloyd was up there speaking, and he was like, well, what are you going to, what do you feel called to do? What do you want to, he was saying that to everybody. And to me, I was like, I want to be you. I want to be Lloyd. That's what I want to do. Now, not everybody in 100X wants to do what we do, but it was so fun for me because it was like, boom, I want to be like you, Mike. It's like whatever that deal is, I want to be like you, Mike. It was just like, Lloyd is helping the people that I run around with, that I relate to, because I've been in business my whole life. And I was just like, that's for me. And I think when a guy finds something that's for him, and it's even more cool when his wife is saying, yeah, I'm right there with you. What it does to their family, what it does to the dynamics. I mean, I just sent, some guys that I work with, younger guys, Micah, that to build homes in Costa Rica with YPO. It was their first family nonprofit giving experience, changed their lives. It just starts with sometimes a great, nice trip to YPO at a nice hotel, but you take a 20-minute drive and your family sees poverty for the first time and sees that they're sweet people and they're amazingly resilient people, but they just live on a dirt floor. And it's eye-opening. And so that's what I love to see, is somebody that's worth hundreds of $millions drop to their knees because they're like, dude, I need to wake up and do something. And doesn't mean they have to, I always worried about that scripture that says, you got to drop it all, sell it all, and follow me. Like, hey, man, I don't know about that. He's probably done that to some people, but I just haven't seen him really wreck someone's life to the point that they wish they didn't hear the call.
Amen. Pete, that's a good word. Thank you so much for your time today. Lloyd and I are proud to be your friend, and thanks for all you're doing. And
Love you guys.
thank you for listening to the 100X podcast. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast service. We would greatly appreciate it if you could rate the show and leave us a review. This podcast is sponsored by Anchor Investments, whose mission is to build America's most generous real estate company. To learn more, please visit anchorinv.com.